Hello and welcome to Algebra, where today we are going to learn how to solve one and two-step equations. All right, important information to solving equations. All right, so we always want to isolate the variables. That means we want to get that variable all by its lonesome, so we just have one variable. All right, and to be able to do that, we have to use inverse operations. Inverse operations means the opposite of an operation. So for example, multiplication and division are opposite operations or inverse operations. Same with addition and subtraction. And same with squaring a number or taking the square root. Those are opposite or inverse operations. Just like cubing a number or taking the cube root. Those are opposite or inverse operations. Okay, so to solve an equation, if more than one operation exists, we have to first take care of the parentheses. And that we could do that usually by doing the distributive property. Right? And then we would combine like terms if needed. And then we add or subtract first to get rid of our constant, and then we multiply or divide to get rid of our coefficient. All right, decimals are acceptable when there are decimals in the question or the equation, or with money, we can use decimals. Any other time, we're going to use fractions. And that's because in algebra, later on this year, we're going to learn how to deal slope and slope-intercept form. And slope is always written as a fraction. And that's why in algebra, we usually keep things as a fraction, unless the decimal is in the question or dealing with money. All right, so these are one-step equations. So with one-step equations, I want to get my variable by itself. So I have to do the inverse of what's happening to it. So I see that my variable is being minused by 7 here. So I want to get rid of that minus 7, and the way I do that is I do a plus 7, and that cancels this out on this side. Because that negative 7 plus 7 will give me 0, and it cancels out. And that leaves me with x. And whatever I do to one side of my equation, I have to do to my other side of my equation. So 10 plus 7 will give me 17. So the answer to that one is x equals 17. When you learn about one-step equations, some teachers tell you to draw a line as your equal sign, and that's very helpful, especially when we start doing ones with multi-steps. Right now, these are just one steps, but when we get to like 2 steps or 3 steps or 4 steps or 5 steps, you might have some problems keeping track of what you're doing to each side, so it might be helpful to draw a line at your equal sign. All right, so I have 10x here. Well, 10x, that means 10 times x. So to get rid of that 10, I have to divide by 10. And that cancels this out because 10 divided by 10 is 1. So that leaves me with 1x, which is what I want. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. 70 divided by 10 is 7. So it's x equals 7. All right, this one I have x divided by 2. Fraction bar means divide. So to get rid of that 2, I can times this by 2 and cancel out those 2's and leave me with just x. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. 10 times 2 gives me 20. So this will be x equals 20. All right, and my next example, I have a fraction. Bum, bum, bum. So fractions are a little bit different. So fractions, we're going to do the inverse, but the inverse of the fraction is called the reciprocal. So to get rid of a fraction, we have to times it by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal means is you flip the fraction. And the reason why we do that is 2/5 times 5 over 2. If we multiply those together, that gives us 1. So that would leave us with 1t, and that's what we want. We want one variable. So we have to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to take this side and times it by 5 over 2. 5 times negative 8 is negative 40. Negative 40 divided by 2 is negative 20. So negative 20 equals t. Usually we write our variables first, so I'm going to write that t equals negative 20. All right, so that's how we get rid of fractions. We times it by the reciprocal. All right, my next one, I have some more fractions. Dun, dun, dun. But it's okay. I have 1/3 plus x equals 2/9. So this is a positive 1/3. So to get rid of that, I have to do a minus 1/3. That cancels that out. Oop, I forgot to draw my line, so let's draw my line. And that leaves me with just x on my left side. On my right side, I have to do the same thing I did to my left side. So I have to minus 1/3 on the right side of my equation. So to combine fractions like this, they have to have a common denominator. All right, so I have to change that 1/3 to match that 2/9. So I can times that by 3 because 3 times 3 will give me 9, and that will get me a common denominator. So 1 times 3 is 3, 3 times 3 is 9, so I have 2/9 minus 3/9. And 2/9 minus 3/9 gives me negative 1/9. And then that is my answer, x equals negative 1/9. If you're not good with that, you can always do that in Desmos. You can do, I'm doing 2/9, and I don't even have to convert it in Desmos. I can do 1 divided by 3, and that gives me negative 0.11111. Or if I hit this fraction button, negative 1/9. Boop, which is what we got right there. All right, this next example, I'm gonna draw my line. I see I have negative 2/3, so I'm gonna do plus 2/3 to get rid of that and leave me with x. Whatever I do to one side, I gotta do to my other side. So I have 3/5 plus 2/3. So I have to, once again, get a common denominator, or I can use my tools and use Desmos, and I can do 3/5, and then I can do plus 2/3. And that gives me this big long decimal, but if I hit my fraction button, I get 19 over 15. So that equals 19 over 15. We always want to keep our answer as a fraction unless there are decimals in our equation or in our answer. And that is how we solve one-step equations. We'll do these two together in class. If you're at home watching this, I will send you a separate video, but just to keep things a little bit shorter, we're going to move on to doing two-step equations. All right, so two-step equations literally means that. It means that there are 2 steps to do to be able to solve the equation. So this first example here, I have 3x plus 5 equals 8. So I want to once again draw a line on my equal sign. I want to get x by itself. So if you think back to our notes that we just took, we want to do add or subtract first. So that means I want to get rid of this thing that's not with the x first. So I see this is a plus 5. So to get rid of that, I need to do a minus 5. And whatever I do to one side, I go to the other side. 8 minus 5 is 3. And over here on my left side, I'm left with 3x. Well, now it's a one-step equation. 3x means 3 times x, so I'm going to divide by 3 to cancel those out and leave me with x. And I'm going to do the same thing to my other side. And 3 divided by 3 gives me 1, so I'm left with x equals 1. All right, here's another two-step. I have 4x minus 5, so that means I'm going to get rid of this minus 5 first. I'm going to do a plus 5 to get rid of that to leave me with just 4x. I'm trying to get x alone. That's my whole goal when I'm solving equations, is getting that variable alone. 15 plus 5 gives me 20. All right, so now I have 4x. I want to divide by 4 to get rid of that 4 and leave me with x. I'm going to do the same thing over here. 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. So that would be x equals 5, and that is my answer. All right, our next question, I have one here. All right, so I want to get rid of this 12 because that's not with my x. Okay, so this is something, a common mistake. A lot of people want to do plus 12 to get rid of this because they see this minus. But remember when we combine like terms, we looked at the number in front, right? Or the thing in front stays with that number. So this is really a positive 12. So to get rid of a positive 12, I have to do a minus 12 to get rid of it. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So that's going to leave me with negative x over 3, and on the right side I have a 2, because 14 minus 12 is 2. So now I need to get rid of this 3, and I need to get rid of this negative. So I'm dividing by negative 3. So to get rid of that, I can multiply by negative 3. And I got to do it to both sides. Those cancel out over there and leave me with x. And 2 times negative 3 gives me negative 6. All right, this equation over here, I have 10 plus h divided by 3 equals 1. So I need to get rid of that 10 first because it's not with my variable. So that's a positive 10. I got to do minus 10 to get rid of it. Boom, it's gone. Do the same thing to the other side. 1 minus 10 gives me negative 9. And then on my left side, I'm still left with that h divided by 3. So I'm dividing by 3, so I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to do times 3 to get rid of that and do the same thing to the other side. Negative 9 times 3 gives me negative 27. And on my left side, those 3's canceled out, and that just leaves me with h. So I'm left with h equals negative 27. All right, this equation down here, I have 2/3 x minus 4 equals 20. I want to get rid of that minus 4 because it's not with my x. So I see it's a minus 4. That means I'm going to do a plus 4 to get rid of it. So I got to do it to both sides, right? 20 plus 4 gives me 24. And on my left side, I'm just left with 2/3 x. So I have a fraction in front of my variable. To get rid of a fraction, I have to times it by the reciprocal. So I flip the fraction. And that's how I get rid of it and just leave me with x. And I gotta do the same thing to the other side. 24 times 3 is 72. 72 divided by 2 gives me 36. So x equals 36. All right, my next equation, I have 2/5 x plus 3 equals 15. So I want to get rid of that plus 3 because it's not next to my variable, it's not attached to my variable. And I do that by doing minus 3. And I get rid of that. I can do the same thing to the other side. So on my left side, I'm left with 2/5 x. And on my right side, 15 minus 3 gives me 12. All right, so to get rid of this fraction, this 2/5, I got to times it by the reciprocal. So I'm going to times it by 5/2. And that cancels it out. And I got to do the same thing to the other side. So my fractions canceled out and left me with x. And on my right side, I have 12 times 5, which is 60. And 60 divided by 2 is 30. So that is x equals 30. All right, my next two equations are a little different because I have this whole big fraction bar here. So usually I would do like plus 8 and move it over there, but I can't do that because it's being divided by this 3. So I have to get rid of this big fraction bar first. So whenever you have a big fraction bar, you need to get rid of that first. So a fraction bar means divide. So to get rid of that, I have to times. So I'm going to times by 3 to get rid of that. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. 3 times 7 is 21. And on my right side, now I'm just left with that x minus 8. So to get x by itself, I got to get rid of that minus 8. So I'm going to do plus 8 to both sides. 21 plus 8 is 29. So x equals 29. All right, this bottom right one, our last one we're going to do together, I have a big fraction bar. So I have to get rid of that big fraction bar. I can't have stuff on top of that and do the fraction bar, so I have to get rid of that. A fraction bar means divide, so I'm going to times to get rid of it. I'm going to times it by 2 because it's being divided by 2, and that's going to cancel it out. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So on my left side, I'm left with y minus 4. And on my right side, 10 times 2 gives me 20. So now I'm left with y minus 4. I just want to get y by itself. So I have to get rid of that minus 4. So I'm going to do plus 4 to get rid of it and leave me with just y. And I can do the same thing to the other side. 20 plus 4 gives me 24. And that is my final answer. Y equals 24. All right, that is 1 and 2 step equations. I hope you guys did well with that. Hopefully you'll understand it. If you need help, get help from a teacher. All right, so if you look at your notes down here, there's a maze with all 2-step equations. What I want you to do is start here where it says start, figure out the maze, and it's going to take you on different question paths all the way until you get to the end. And once you get to the end, you are done. And hopefully you've mastered the skill of solving 2-step equations. All right, as always, if you ever have a question, ask a teacher, and next time I will see you, we will be doing some more equation stuff. Have a great day!